At the beginning of the story, introduced to the largest crime syndicate in Korea called Gold Moon, which operates under the auspices of a legitimate corporate company. The syndicate operates under the leadership of Chairman Young Moon-suk, the man who could unite the most dangerous crime gangs under Gold Moon. Suk recently escaped prosecution on several charges. In the process, he comes to realize that the police may have a spy within his organization. Meanwhile, Lee Ja-sung, a bigwig in the organization, and his men then go on a hunt to find the spy. They then arrested a suspected member and tortured him to get a confession. But they can't get a confession, so they kill him and throw his body into the sea in a barrel. Meanwhile, Chairman Suk is on his way home from his employer's house. Suddenly, a truck appears at the intersection and hits his car. Luckily, the emergency unit could arrive in time and then took Suk to the hospital. News of the incident quickly spreads, and the entire organization gathers at the hospital. Jae-sung then meets with Lee Jong-gu, one of the 3 top leaders under Chairman Suk. He then goes to the airport to greet another leader named Jung Chung, who has just returned from Shanghai. Chung is a rather eccentric person, but he considers Jae-sung to be his close friend, as they have known each other for a long time. On the way to the hospital, Chung gives Jae-sung a watch as a gift to celebrate his wife's pregnancy. But Jae-sung rejects the gift, as the watch is a replica and mocks him for buying it. Chung takes out his frustration on his subordinates, as the watch looks like the original. In short, all the leaders of the organization have now gathered at the hospital to await the results of the surgery. The doctors then come out of the operating room and announce that Chairman Suk has passed away. The news makes Jong-gu angry at the doctors and leaves the others confused, as the future of the organization becomes uncertain. The next day, they hold a funeral ceremony to pay their last respects to Chairman Suk. The police also show up to conduct surveillance, which angers Jong-gu. He confronts them and smashes their cameras. Then, Kang Chol-hwa, a police chief leading the investigation into Gold Moon, arrives to help his subordinates. That forces Jong-gu to back off and pay them for the damaged camera. Back at the police headquarters, the higher-ups then discuss the factions vying for succession after Chairman Suk's death. Where Gold Moon itself is a combination of the Jabum Gang, Jail Gang, and Not Moon Gang. The 3 candidates are likely to fill the vacant seat of Gold Moon's new chairman. The first candidate is Chung, who is supported by the Not Moon Gang and has close ties with the Triads, and often manages businesses outside Korea. The second candidate is Jong-gu, who is backed by the most prominent Jabum Gang and is close to Chairman Suk. These 2 candidates are the most likely to fill the vacant seat, as they are the most influential leaders in the organization. Then the last candidate is Suki, who is supported by the Jail Gang. But Suki is old and his strength is unlikely to match the other 2 candidates. The police then plan to influence the succession process to bring them down. On the other hand, Jae-sung is playing a board game with an unknown woman. She tells him about the upcoming board meeting, which will be held in 2 days to discuss the succession process. He suddenly becomes upset and goes to an abandoned building to meet someone. That person is Kang. Jae-sung turns out to be an undercover cop who infiltrated the Gold Moon Syndicate. The woman he didn't recognize before was a detective. Jae-sung has risen through the ranks over the past 8 years and is ranked 5th in command, just below the top 3 leaders and Chairman Suk. He's angry at Chairman Kang because Kang promised his men he'd be in line after they took care of Chairman Suk. But Kang tells him that now Jae-sung must help the mission to influence the succession process. He's also upset because Kang somehow knew that his wife was pregnant and rewarded him. That means someone is following Jae-sung without him knowing. He was frustrated by this situation, but he had no other choice. 2 days later, they held a board meeting as planned. They decided to hold a vote next week to elect a new chairman. As expected, 2 opposing factions emerged between Chung and Jong-gu. Jae-sung is closer to Chung, but he doesn't officially support anyone. He then walks back to the parking lot with Chung. Chung then tells him that he has to go back to Shanghai for business soon, and asks him to guard his office. So, Jong-gu can't do anything while he's gone. Suddenly, a car appears and almost hits them. It turns out to be Jong-gu trying to mess with them, and then drives off. Chung then invited Jae-sung to a party to celebrate his wife's pregnancy. Then afterward, Jae-sung met the detectives to relay a lot of information. He asked about the details of the mission, as his life was being threatened. But the detectives couldn't share the mission details as per protocol. Jae-sung just had to do what he was told until he got angry. Even his colleagues in the syndicate trusted him more than his fellow cops. Just before Jae-sung leaves, he then informs him that Chung will be leaving the country tomorrow afternoon. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Jong-gu invites other leaders to his office and tries to intimidate them into supporting him. The next day, Jae-sung then accompanies Chung to the airport, where he realizes that many undercover cops are monitoring them there. He doesn't know what to expect, which makes him nervous. Right after Chung passes through the security gate, several police officers come up to him and take him away. He meets with Police Chief Kang in an interrogation room nearby. Kang shows him a file on Gold Moon's investigation report. Chung realizes that the file contains some internal data that can only be obtained if the police still have spies inside the organization. But to his surprise, Kang proposed a plan to take down Jong-gu together so that Chung could easily take over the vacant chairman position. Kang then tells him to think about it during his flight. Just before Chung leaves, Chung wonders how the police knew that he would be flying to Shanghai today. On the plane, he told his lawyer to do a background check on Kang and hired a hit squad to clean out the spies within the organization. After that, Kang orders his men to move to start his plan. On that side, Jong-gu and his crew are having breakfast. Suddenly, the police barge into the restaurant. Kang shows them the official warrant from the court and then takes them away. Just before they leave, Jong-gu wonders if Chung has sold it out. It's answered vaguely by Chairman Kang. Chung receives news of the arrest and immediately plans a meeting with Jong-gu and flies back to Korea. Upon arriving in Korea, he immediately meets Jong-gu and engages in a heated conversation that ends with Jong-gu warning him. However, Chung insists that it wasn't him who revealed the information. Chung then goes to meet Chairman Kang secretly in an empty stadium. He gives him a box full of mooncakes as a prize of gratitude. Kang then examined the gift and found a bundle of money inside the mooncake. Chung hoped that with his help it could smoothen his business in the future, but Kang rejects it and throws it on the floor. On the other hand, Jae-sung takes his wife to the gynecologist to monitor her pregnancy. On the way home, his wife then gets a phone call and receives it in private. It turns out that the call was from Chairman Kang, asking about Jae-sung. Apparently, she was spying on her husband behind his back for Kang. Like her husband, she felt that this espionage mission had caused her a lot of stress, so she wanted to quit. She also felt more loyal to her husband now, as he was the one who helped her out of her old miserable life. Elsewhere, Kang's background check results finally arrived. Not only information about Kang, the Chinese hacker that Chung hired could get secret information about the entire espionage mission. The files he read left Chung shocked. Meanwhile, the group of hitmen Chung hired had arrived in Korea. They are a famous Chinese hitman group called the Yanbian Hobos. Jae-sung calls Chung asking about his arrival in Korea. Chung was friendly as usual, then told him to meet him at a warehouse because he had a special surprise. Jae-sung had a bad feeling, but he couldn't reject the invitation. On the other hand, the Yanbian Hobos made their first move. From the hacked files, they found out Jae-sung detective's identity and visit her. She resisted, but the Yanbian Hobos managed to caught her alive. Meanwhile, Jae-sung arrives at the warehouse and goes inside with his trusted subordinate Sekmu. Chung then tells him to open a barrel to get the surprise promised by Chung. Jae-sung cautiously approaches the barrel and then opens it. Surprising him, he finds his detectives inside stripped down until only used underwear and bleeding. Chung then explains that the woman inside the barrel, whom Jae-sung regularly meets to play chess and provide information, is in fact a spy. Jae-sung breaks out in a cold sweat as Chung hands over the mission file with detailed information on the personnel involved. Chung then has one last surprise for him and tells him to turn the file to the last page. Just before he read the last page, Chung takes a shovel and viciously beats Sekmu. Unknown to Jae-sung, his most trusted subordinate in the organization is also an undercover cop. Chung could find all the spies around Ja-sung and eliminates them as a gift to him. This confused Ja-sung, because even though Chung had the mission file, he somehow knew his true identity. Chung told the Yanbian hobos to have fun with the detective's body, so that makes Ja-sung take a gun and shoot him to save her from what the Yanbian hobos will do to her. Meanwhile, Kang goes to the prison to see Jong-gu. He gives Jong-gu pictures of Chung and himself, which makes Jong-gu think that Chung is the one who sold him. Jong-gu then orders his men to take revenge on Chung. The next day, Ja-sung meets Kang to discuss the situation. Kang tells him that their system has been hacked and all the confidential information has been leaked. Ja-sung desperately wants to pull out of the mission. But suddenly, Suki, the leader of the three organizations, suddenly appears. Kang has agreed to help him get the chairman's seat, so that the police can control the organization from within. Kang threatens to spread Ja-sung's identity, so that leaves him with no other choice but to drop the plan, even though Kang has promised to pull him out. On the other hand, Jong-gu's men mobilize and organize an attack on Chung. Despite being outnumbered, he could give the attackers a hard time. Chung is trapped in an elevator full of Jong-gu's men. He defeats them, but it makes him seriously injured. The police then arrived and took the injured to the hospital. Jong-gu's men also tried to get Ja-sung's wife, but the police were waiting for them. Unfortunately, the shock caused Ja-sung's wife to miscarry. The doctor told Ja-sung that his wife's stress levels had affected her pregnancy. Ja-sung heard about what happened to Chung and went to the hospital. His condition was so bad that Chung wanted to talk to his best friend one last time. Chung advises him to choose a side for his own good, signaling that he knows Ja-sung's identity. Just before Chung died, he told Ja-sung that he left a gift in his office safe. The organization then held a second funeral this month, releasing one of the successor candidates. With Chung dead and Jong-gu locked up in prison, it seemed that Suki's succession would go smoothly. Ja-sung then goes to Chung's office and finds his files in the safe. He also finds a watch, which is the gift Chung promised, but this time it wasn't a fake brand. Ja-sung realized that Chung was really his true friend, but he realized it too late. On the day of the vote, Suki asks Ja-sung to accompany him to the board meeting. But suddenly, they're headed to a remote location with a group of Suki's men surrounding them. It turns out that Suki was planning to betray their deal with the police and then eliminate Ja-sung. But instead of eliminating Ja-sung, they beat up Suki. The absence of Chung and Jong-gu makes Ja-sung the most influential person in the organization. Meanwhile, the police release Jong-gu that day. He then goes to his office to find that Ja-sung's men are waiting for him. They then throw Jong-gu off the top of the building. Ja-sung also later sends the Yanbian hobos to root out the other leaders who support Suki and Chairman Kang, who has repeatedly betrayed his promises. Ja-sung was done spying for the police at the cost of many things. Finally, Ja-sung decided to take on his new role as the head of the Gold Moon crime syndicate and live his life as a free man under his own will. After that, the movie ended.